Hello, everyone. This is Ben and Dan Talks About. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but we're back now, and there's about 85 feet of snow outside, and it is the winter.
About 85 feet of coronavirus, too.
We're here to kind of continue a video discussion series that we had started about a year ago of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We've done a review of season 1, and since then we have finished the whole show. And so we're going to try to
ourselves.
Yeah, we're going to try to do a review for each season, a couple of our favorite episodes.
General thoughts and insights and opinions. And,
exactly. But a couple things, overall thoughts of season 2 of DS9.
We're going into Sisko's hair. We're going into Leonidas' nose. We're going
there.
Yeah.
First thing that we see right off the bat is that DS9 is dipping its toe a little more into serialization of Star Trek. We see our first 3-part episode, the saga with Leonidas and the Circle.
First 3 episodes.
Yep, first 3 episodes of the season. We get into continuing plot. You know, there's an argument that you could make that Best of Both Worlds, episodes 1, 2, and then the episode right after that, Family, is like a 3-part episode, but it's because the episode Family takes place directly after the events of the Borg invasion. But it wasn't officially known as a 3-parter. So this is our first to be continued 3 different times.
Kind of like, it's giving you the signals, though, of where the writers were ultimately wanting to go.
Yep.
Right. It's pretty bold starting off the season with 3 continuous episodes.
It was. And, you know, right off the bat, we get the continuing narrative of the Bajoran government, their instability. You've got the power struggles between Vedic Bareil and Vedic Wynn at the start. And then, you know, the insurgency group, the Circle, the death of Leonidas at the end of...
The rescue and then death.
Yes, yeah. Which actually caused you to stop watching for a little bit.
Well, I was very excited. I just watched Twin Peaks, who has the same actor, insert name of actor here, who plays Benjamin Horne on Twin Peaks, and that was just such a little treat. I was just so distraught when he died that I took a little break because, you know, I was hoping he'd come back. I was hoping maybe he'd be a little bit of a recurring character. He's an important government official. You know, he's got all the weight of not understanding how to be this person everyone needs him to be, but he doesn't know how to, and maybe he can grow into it, and then he'll pop in here and there like Vedic Bareil. You know, we keep seeing Benjamin Horne on DS9. That's so cool. But, you know, but then he dies, so we didn't. All of those imagined futures and possibilities, you know, they just
came tumbling down.
I was just, the floor was pulled out from underneath me.
I will say, to your point though, I would probably much rather have him than Vedic Bareil.
I like Vedic Bareil too.
I like Vedic Bareil, but
I would agree.
He's a bit of a there's something about Vedic Bareil that makes me uneasy.
There is a little something.
There's just a little something.
Yeah. What is it? I don't know.
He doesn't have, you know, he doesn't.
Yeah, not a lot of gravitas around him.
You know? Exactly. It's exactly right. So I've got my notes here. We don't have our handy assistant.
I got my notes
right now to hand. Yeah. Do you have your doodles?
I didn't doodle this time.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
We don't have our assistant to hand me my notes through the window this time. That's okay. I got them right here.
Quarantine. You gotta make some sacrifices.
Exactly. Yeah, we just learned about there's this new virus out called the coronavirus. We're taking protective measures now.
Yeah, don't worry.
We have just instituted.
Gonna get ahead of this thing.
Safety measures. Yeah, we're 6 feet apart. We're just super giant. Okay, so what we did was we chose 4 episodes, and we know 2 of them. We both know the ones we picked, but then 2 of the other ones are 1 pick each that are a surprise. But us knowing each other, we have the concern that we might have picked the same episode. I don't know. So this is either going to be 3 episodes, the top 3 episodes, or the top 4 episodes of season 2. But I thought it'd be kind of fun if we just say our episodes at the same time, and then if they're the same episodes, it'll be kind of a hoot.
That sounds like a fun plan.
On the count of 3.
Wait, should we do it now, or should we do it after we go through the first 2? Let's do it now.
Let's do it now.
Okay.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Whispers.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
of course. I knew it. Bunch of fucking nerds.
What are you gonna do? It's a great episode.
It's a great episode. So, okay, so we chose the same episode. So it's the top 3 of season 2. So Whispers is. So I was thinking about this when I was watching it recently. Whispers is, while it's a great episode, it should, I think, kind of be a Dominion story episode.
Right.
When you think about the plot, because spoiler alerts, it's a classic reversal episode, twist at the end.
Yeah.
There's a classic twist that then changes your entire impression of the episode.
Huge payoff at the end.
The end of the episode makes you want to go back and rewatch the whole thing again, just to see it from the
new eyes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have that whole new perspective.
Yeah, you once you know actually what's going on. And so what the twist is O'Brien has been preparing the security measures for this diplomatic conference that's taking place with the Paradas. And on his way back, he gets replaced by a duplicate O'Brien. Except in this episode, you actually have DS9 and the entire crew finding out about it before he gets back. But as the audience, we're unaware that we're following the duplicate O'Brien, or that the rest of the crew knows that he's the duplicate. And so what you see, and what makes the episode, I think, one of my top picks of season 2, is from the duplicate O'Brien's perspective, you see everyone just acting really weird and unusual.
What are you two doing up so early?
I had a lot of work to catch up on at school. Thought I'd get an early start.
At 5:30 in the morning? What's this?
Just getting a head start, Chief.
Head start? Everybody seems to be getting a head start on me today.
I've been waiting for you, Chief.
What is it, Julian?
No more excuses this time.
Excuses?
I'd like you in my office in an hour.
For what?
You're physical. You can't put this off any longer.
Look, this isn't a good day.
It's the perfect day. Commander Sisko has arranged to have you covered.
I spent the last week going over these arrangements with the Paradas. I really need to
I want those upper pylons operational, Chief. That's your priority. Understood?
Yes, sir.
And arousing suspicion in him that is entirely realistic to the primary O'Brien character.
Yeah, it makes you think there's something wrong with everyone else. There's a massive conspiracy. There's some sort of influence has overcome, all of the crew of DS9, possibly all of Starfleet.
Yeah. And what makes me think that it should have been a Dominion plot episode is that the action of having O'Brien get replaced by a duplicate is entirely out of the Dominion's playbook once you see it later on,
right,
in the 3rd season, even in the season 2 finale. And so I thought that was kind of the writers experimenting with some of the conventions that we see later on, which I thought was really interesting.
I wonder if you could take it this like Daystrom Institute kind of perspective on maybe the Parada, aware of the Dominion being capable of doing this, started experimenting with their own technology on trying to replicate some sort of level of being able to insert some kind of unknown duplicate themselves, right?
Right. That's what I would have in my own head.
Yeah.
Canon,
I love about it though too is that you find out at the end that initially the entire crew hears rumors that it might not be O'Brien, but they're not totally sure. And so everyone's interacting with him like trying to figure out, is this really O'Brien? Is this not O'Brien? They give him the physical. He still looks, everything seems to be totally normal, totally fine. but it leads to just the really awkward and strange interactions, particularly with Keiko.
How is it?
Yeah, those are some of the best scenes in the episode, I think,
Yeah.
because they're so uncomfortable. You know, at the start, when you don't know that this is a duplicate O'Brien, you think that Keiko has been replaced. You think that everyone else in the crew has been replaced. It's such a classic, twist.
Well, it keeps you guessing, and before you even think maybe everyone, because you first think something is wrong with Keiko, something's
Molly.
maybe weird in their relationship, you don't know. Then later on, Sisko's lied about why he was talking to Keiko that morning, that she was up very early.
By the way, I noticed you and Keiko out in front of the school this morning, talking. Is there anything wrong?
Oh, Jake is having some problems with his grades.
Besides, it's a chance to help get those grades of yours back up, right?
Oh, my grades are great. Just want to keep them that way.
You almost wonder, is there something going on between Sisko and Keiko? Then it gets bigger and bigger. Everywhere O'Brien goes, it's everybody, and then okay, clearly this is the whole ship, whole station. Something's wrong.
Something's not right.
Right.
And you've got O'Brien's personal logs keeping track of this. Also, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention the way this episode kicks off and then follows through is you've got O'Brien narrating the whole way through its personal log, which is something you see come again later with, an episode considered the greatest episode of DS9 in the Pale Moonlight.
Moonlight, yeah.
Where you've got Sisko kind of narrating, talking in.
Yeah.
So just like that same device,
Also,
kind of.
it also serves really well to misdirect you, to make you think it's real O'Brien.
Right.
He's narrating his personal logs. Of course, it's real O'Brien. You don't get the idea that this is an unreliable narrator when the captain's log and the personnel log has been used for so long to just communicate expositional, information.
Right.
So just a great episode overall.
Yeah.
I love the little moment. Anytime that they're able to show some sass from Molly is like my favorite of DS9. And there's a great scene in this where Duplicate O'Brien encounters her for the first time.
Did you have sweet dreams, darling?
Go away.
Just shut down.
Which also did kind of make me think, like, does she just know that something is up with this O'Brien? Because I don't think that Keiko could have told her that.
That's one of the things that makes it seem a little, like, that is a little bit of a strangeness, because when Jake sees O'Brien and interacts with him, it definitely seems like he doesn't know anything might be up until the very end, right?
You and I are the only ones who can help.
Jake, Sisko to security. He's here. Level H2, Section 5.
Yeah.
Which just would make sense that they just wouldn't maybe say anything to Jake about it.
They couldn't tell the whole crew.
Right, and so you would think they wouldn't tell Molly either. Obviously, she's so young.
Yeah.
Right? So then it makes you think, did she just intuit that there was something different, that this wasn't really her dad?
That was a question I had at that scene. Yeah.
It is kind of interesting too,
Go
though.
away.
No.
O'Brien is really like thinking that this, I feel like, lends into, I don't know if of continuing to misdirect you or a little bit of a hint, but O'Brien is very suspicious of everyone. And at the final, or at a moment where he's getting his physical from Bashir, he starts to wonder, like, or maybe there's something wrong with me. Is there something wrong with me?
I mean, there is something wrong with me.
And then Bashir cuts him off. He's like, nope, clean bill of health. You're good to go.
Well, that's why everybody seems so
Relax,
strange.
Chief. I'm giving you a clean bill of health.
And so that, like, when you find out later that it was something wrong with O'Brien, like, it almost seemed like Bashir is, like, shutting him down from, like, following that train a little bit from...
Yeah, that's totally right.
Yeah.
It's another example of just, when you rewatch it, it's one of those, it's an episode that has a high rewatchability.
Yeah.
Because you go back and you see little details like that.
Yeah.
And this episode does a really good job of that. And so, also one of the first examples of an O'Brien Must Suffer episode.
I was going to mention this. Yes, it's a staple of DS9. O'Brien must suffer. So
Yes.
of course, if you're gonna recap a season, there's a few important things you're gonna have to hit, and one of them being O'Brien has to suffer. Could not leave out an O'Brien suffering episode.
No, but we do get later in the season. I just realized earlier today we get the episode Tribunal.
What happens?
I think that's what it's called, where O'Brien he's on vacation with Keiko and Molly, and then he gets arrested by the Cardassians and put on trial. And they're like, we already know the outcome of your...
that episode is the season?
That's the season. That's near the end of this season, yeah.
Holy shit. I might have picked that episode, honestly. I forgot that one.
It's a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of honorable mentions. Which does bring me, before we go on to our next episode, brings me to a one point I did want to mention is that a couple of problems I had in season 1 were mainly just some of the acting by Terry Farrell and Alexander Siddig.
Doctor!
But I actually think in season 2 that they improved their performance considerably, and I think it's just from the experience that they were getting, doing like 26 shows a season and everything. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that season 2 is great, as well as season 1, and a lot of people have this interpretation that Star Trek has a terrible season 1 and 2, starting with TNG, and then that lasted through DS9 and Voyager, that they just the first seasons are always shaky. And they're always, you always do get into a groove, I think, with these TV shows, but I think I totally disagree with that assessment of DS9. I think it gets better as it goes on, but it has a really strong first season and an even better second season.
I think it is just so drastic because by season 4 it gets so freaking good.
Yeah.
That it is, and I guess we do have the perspective watching from some of the stuff that passes for Star Trek these days. But no, I would totally agree. Season 1 definitely has a few weak spots, but overall is pretty fantastic, I'd say. And season 2 is just even better. And the actors definitely seem to have settled a little more into their roles, specifically Bashir and Dax.
Dax, yeah.
Yeah.
I liked the Ala Moraine episodes. Going back to season 1.
I haven't rewatched it. I wonder if I would like it more or less on the second watch.
I liked it.
I did.
I thought it was fun. It's a fun episode.
Yeah. 1, 2, skip a do. 3, 4, Ala Moraine.
Yeah, so our next selection in season 2 of DS9 is the episode Rules of Acquisition, which is, I think, the 7th or the 8th episode. It's pretty early on in the season. Earlier than Whispers, actually, which does matter in DS9 because it's pretty serialized. But this episode continues the ongoing story of one of our favorite characters of DS9 and indeed of Star Trek overall, which is the Grand Nagus, Zek.
Little late, aren't we?
Played by Wallace Shawn of The Princess Bride fame, Inconceivable. And this is, I think, he usually does, I think, about an episode a season, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, but this is one of the best, I think, because you've got the story with Pell and Quark. So right off the bat, we start off and this Ferengi is giving advice to Quark. And we also get some character development of Ferengis overall and of Rom and Quark. This episode kind of starts off their sort of opposing trajectories in terms of their thoughts on women's rights, Ferengi women's rights, progressive values and everything.
Well, neither of them are really progressive.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like at the start of this, both of them are pretty typical Ferengis in their beliefs.
You haven't told anybody, have you? You mean about Pell? Quiet.
I haven't breathed a word. I thought it'd be best if you told Zek yourself.
Nobody's gonna tell Zek anything, is that clear?
But she's a female.
Not so loud.
Who wears clothes and is trying to earn profit. Why, she even quotes from the sacred rules of acquisition. Such a female must be severely punished.
I know that.
Then we must stop her.
But as the series progresses, Rom becomes much more progressive and Quark becomes very set in his ways, very conservative. Who's the TV character that everyone liked to mention from like the 70s or 80s? It's a guy that was like, you loved him, but he was kind of sexist and misogynistic.
It's a lot.
That's very true. There's a guy, I never watched it because it's before our time, but
It was a show.
yeah, it was a show. I'll think of it. Anyways, so you've got this setup at the start of the episode, kind of detailing the casual misogyny of the Ferengi.
Well, that explains it. It's Curzon who's beating us, not this female. But I still prefer a Ferengi female. One who never wears clothes, never talks back, and never plays Tongo.
Is that really how you prefer your women? Naked and submissive?
You find such a lifestyle appealing?
And then what do we get right off the bat? We get a Ferengi that is being a little too nice to Quark and providing information.
So far, the only thing I've done right is pick you as my consultant.
I'm glad you feel that way.
We find out that this character, whose name's Pel, is a Ferengi woman who is dressing as a male to earn profit and to just kind of, blow the lid off of the whole.
Yeah, just wants to
society.
be a person, right? Just wants to have a chance to, Pel is very clearly has a great business sense and is driven to kind of follow that and pursue it, right?
Yeah. And this story kind of intercedes both with her feelings of Quark, right? Which are a little bit dated, in a sense. This is a woman who's earning profit who then falls in love with a guy.
It lends itself to some great sexual tension, though.
It does. It really does. Some amazing scenes. But that story kind of, intersects with the story of the Grand Nagus and the Gamma Quadrant, which otherwise, up until this point, has remained kind of a nebulous other part of space that is otherwise not characterized by really anything crazy.
Sure.
But we get our first mention of the Dominion in this episode.
The Karama.
Who's the Karama?
An important power in the Dominion.
The Dominion? What's that?
Let's just say, if you want to do business in the Gamma Quadrant, you have to do business with the Dominion.
Coming from a species called the Dozai, which I always find like a little bit funny because I feel like the writers or the costume design, they were trying to figure out like, how do we make the Gamma Quadrant different? We got to have some kind of weird looking people. And you get the Dozai, which are these pretty big, powerful, red face painted humanoids that kind of seem to speak with a bit of a Nordic accent.
This is a waste of time. We should be talking directly to Zek.
I know we should be talking to Zek.
Then why do you bother talking to this insignificance?
Now see what you've done.
What?
You've made me look foolish.
And their faces are painted red, and then they've got these white stripes with these blue dots, which are also very like similar to the Scandinavian country flag.
Yeah.
And it's just like really funny because I feel like that was just so unintentional, but they just like inadvertently created just this like, we're Nordic aliens. I don't like,
Star Trek has done that before.
Yeah.
These are Nordics in space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of silly. I don't know. And I feel like they get it better. Like they nail it, I think, with like the Jem'Hadar and then, the Vorta and everything.
Yeah.
But it looks kind of like TOS. Like, look how different these aliens look. Like
they do. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way, but they totally look like something that would come out of the makeup department of the original series
Yeah.
from the 1960s.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So then we get to the reason that the Nagus says that they're there, which is that he wants 10,000 vats of Tullaberry wine, which is funny because this reminds me of the scene from Breaking Bad where Badger and Skinny Pete are talking about Tullaberry wine. As if it's from Voyager, I think, in the episode.
Yeah, like-
I think Skinny Pete's like, that's Voyager, yo.
Tullaberries from Gamma Quadrant, yo.
That's Voyager, dude.
Oh my God, that's a great scene. But what I love is that the Breaking Bad writers are so precise that I think they intentionally made it that Badger was misremembering the Star Trek show that Tullaberry wine comes from.
Or Skinny Pete, right? Miscorrects. He miscorrects.
He
Badger.
miscorrects, yeah, you're right. Yeah, Skinny Pete miscorrects him, yeah. But then we get the very funny scene where the Grand Nagus tells Quark, we don't want 10,000 vats, I actually want 100,000 vats.
When Quark's already struggling to even get 10,000.
Yeah, exactly. But then we find out about the Dominion and that the Dozai can't even get 100,000 vats of Tullaberry wine because of the Dominion. And then Quark kind of uncovers that he doesn't uncover, he kind of figures out on his own, because he's a pretty smart business guy, that this is actually the reason that the Grand Nagus sent him out to the Gamma Quadrant and sent him after the Tullaberry wine, was to really just find out more information about this suspicious empire kind of known as the Dominion. What I love about that and the Dominion's introduction is that first off, I just love that it's the Ferengi that introduced this one of, I think, the best villains of Star Trek.
Right.
It's first introduced not by Starfleet intelligence, not by, we've got to be afraid of this big bad galactic threat against the universe, like it would be in newer Trek shows. It's the fucking Ferengi chasing profit. You always follow money. And where does it lead? It leads to the Dominion. And I love that that's the first drop of name drop of them, But the bigger story here is about Pell and her relationship to Quark, And so as he's trying to get these 100,000 vats of Tullaberry wine and failing, this sexual tension increases between him and Pell. To the point where Pell ends up kissing Quark, and they are found by the woman Dozai, who I'm forgetting her name.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. This scene then directly leads to, I think, one of my favorite scenes in DS9, one of the funniest scenes in Star Trek, I think, where they're in the shuttlecraft and they're leaving. Quark's like, we got to get back to the station. I got to tell Nagus about the Dominion. I got to do this, right? And Pell is like, don't you want to talk about what happened? Don't you want to talk about the fact that we kissed? And Quark just goes, you didn't kiss me.
You never kissed me.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't. I don't want to discuss it anymore.
But he says it almost like the way that it's acted by Armin Shimmerman makes you think that like Quark legitimately deleted this from his memory. He has no actual recollection of him and Pell kissing, like at all. It's almost like his brain could not even comprehend what happened.
Too much.
And so it just completely repressed it away. But then this leads to, Rom's jealousy of Pell's new position in Quark's life, leads to him uncovering Pell's fake man Ferengi ears.
His fake lobes.
And then that leads to Rom telling Quark fainting in his bar, which then leads to a legitimately kind of heartbreaking scene where we see the first glimpse of Quark's kind of obstinance to progression and to, the upward mobility of females in society and just his overall kind of very traditional values.
Ferengi values.
Yeah. Pell wants to run away with him after her identity is known.
Then come with me to the Gamma Quadrant. No one there cares if I wear clothes or not.
I'd care.
And then he says, I'd care. And that is such a heartbreaking line. It's such a line that characterizes Quark's kind of. He's one of the only characters on DS9 who doesn't really change that much. And I think this is kind of the start of that thought that no, he is always kind of stuck on his own path in a way, you know?
But I think it's then that rejection that really emboldens Pell, that she feels, you know, I've been told my whole life that I'm not allowed to do these things, I'm not equal to do these things, but she has just played an instrumental role in striking one of the biggest possible opening trade negotiations in Ferengi history. It's a whole new quadrant of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And she's rejected from it, and that is the moment where I think she's had enough, and she reveals herself to the Nagus.
Yep. Which another great scene by Wallace Shawn as the Grand Nagus.
No! It's a female!
Who then also has his own trajectory, which we'll talk about in later reviews. But he starts off being completely horrified. And it's played for comedic laughs. It's played kind of for kicks, as most Ferengi things kind of are, which there's an argument on whether that's appropriate or not. I think it's pretty amusing, especially because later on the Nagus changes. And spoiler alert, that ends up kind of burning Quark in the end, which we'll get to later. But just a great episode. One of my favorites of the season. One of my favorite Nagus episodes overall. Do you have any other thoughts on this episode?
No, I think, all in all, it's just a solid Ferengi episode, solid Nagus episode.
The last episode that we're going to talk about as one of our favorites. This is I don't know what your feelings are on this, but this is my favorite episode of this season. And this is actually one of my favorite episodes of DS9 overall. Wow. Yes. I fucking love this episode. And it is the season finale of season 2 called The Jem'Hadar. And this is the grand introduction of the Dominion. We've been hearing about them in several different episodes. We've heard about them in Rules of Acquisition, obviously, the episode we just talked about, in Sanctuary, the episode with those Skria refugees,
right?
And then in Shadowplay, which is the episode with the Holographic Society.
Great episode.
Yeah. So we've gotten mentions of the Dominion over the course of season 2, kind of like in TNG with the Borg, but a little more involved. There are more mentions than you get of the Borg before they actually just show up. But still, it's the same planting of the seed, and then, just a great first reveal of the Jem'Hadar, of the Vorta, and the idea of the Founders. And so this episode, a couple things I love about it. One is there's a gigantic tonal shift in the middle of the episode. It starts off being a very family-oriented episode. You've got the backstory of Jake and Ben Sisko losing Jennifer. And so anytime that there's an episode that focuses on them two, it kind of focuses on the fact that they should get together as father and son maybe more than they do. And so right off the bat, you start with this episode, you have Jake and Captain Sisko, Commander at the time, excuse me, deciding that they are going to go to a planet in the Gamma Quadrant, and they're gonna just have a field day, gonna assess the soil samples, going to basically do a scientist report for Jake's school project, right? And it's a great opportunity for them to get out as father and son. Very quickly, it gets comedically, turned on its head by Jake wants to bring along Nog, who's his friend. And while, Commander Sisko doesn't hate Nog necessarily, he wants this to be a father and son moment. So you've already got this kind of comedic irony of this is becoming something Commander Sisko doesn't want it to be. Then compounded by the fact that Quark comes along as well, because he has an ulterior motive of getting Commander Sisko to display his advertisements across the station's monitors, right? another great little comedic effect. You know, they're all on the runabout, and Cisco's pretty exacerbated.
All right.
Exasperated, I should say.
Exasperated.
And so then they take off to this planet. More funny scenes at the campgrounds. More of Quark kind of being very out of his element in a natural setting. And then Quark and Ben Sisko get kidnapped, right? By the Jem'Hadar. We see our first interaction of the Vorta. We see their first and only use of telekinetic energy, which is in this episode.
Little headcanon, that was actually just manufactured by the Vorta to make themselves seem more powerful. We never see it again because they can't naturally actually do it.
That's
just,
some good...
Just trying to scare them.
Good Daystrom Institute material right there. And so, you know, they stumble across Eris, who is looking like she's trying to escape from the Jem'Hadar. Jem'Hadar captures all of them, except Nog and Jake, and then takes them to a camp. And then Nog and Jake, there's a really fun kind of, I think, character building narrative that forms with them, where they are now in a real situation, right? They don't necessarily know just how grave the stakes are, but they know that something's wrong. But it's still played for comedy. You still have them going onto the runabout and trying to figure out the navigational system.
Computer, fly us back to the station.
Please restate command.
Computer, disengage autopilot and lay in a course back to the wormhole.
Enter authorization code.
And then you've got one of my favorite lines from the episode, which is they disable the autopilot, and then Jake goes laying a course for the wormhole, and then the computer goes, well, the autopilot is disengaged.
Computer, what's the status on the autopilot?
The automatic pilot system is not functional.
Lay in a course for the wormhole at warp 8.
Unable to comply. The automatic pilot system is not functional.
Which
you just took it apart.
And so, you know, you've got their own little kind of narrative and character building. You've got Jake and his dad, right? And then you're getting all of this information about the Dominion. So this episode works on so many levels. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add in quickly that it's a great little showcasing of where Nog is at, like, with his development and his maturity right now compared to what we see much later as the war with the Dominion really heats up and kind of, you know, the arcs his character takes.
It absolutely is. His fear, you know, the comedic freakouts that he has.
Screeching.
When yep.
Escape pods!
The screeching and the hissing. Some great hissing.
Hands down, favorite Ferengi feature. It's just so absurdly funny.
Like, it's amazing.
I love it.
It's amazing.
It's great.
And so, yeah, I'm always impressed when I watch this episode that it's not a two-parter. It's not a cliffhanger episode. This episode does everything that it needs to do in 42 minutes or whatever, however long runtimes were at that period in time, right? But you get the other half of this episode, which is the introduction of the Dominion. And what I really love, just like the introduction of the Borg, is the way that they kind of show this enemy to you, this villain for Star Trek. They do it in, I think, a very unique way. It's not like the Dominion or the Borg are these universe-ending, they can just, by the flick of their finger, end the universe. I mean, there's a certain amount of Star Trek villains that are like that.
Sure.
But not the scariest ones. You know, the Borg, as they're first shown, kind of before they're muddled later on, but they're first shown as just the ultimate user. They are here to consume and to improve themselves, and they have no care of anything else. They don't care about culture. They don't care about life. They don't care about preservation of anything. No, they are just here to consume and to grow. The Dominion here are shown immediately as being much more informed than the Federation. right? And I think what I love about the introduction of the Dominion is they make several specific moves that set up the Dominion perfectly in my mind. So, first one, the meeting with the Jem'Hadar soldier, the very first time we talk to a Jem'Hadar, he knows all about the Alpha Quadrant. He knows about the treaty with the Cardassians. He knows about the Klingons. He knows about the Ferengi and the humans. He knows about the weapon that Klingons use, the Batleth, right? The Federation doesn't even know that the Dominion exists at this time. Well, they don't know what they are at all. They know they exist, but, and this is another thing that I think they do fairly well, Federation doesn't seem to have taken the initiative to figure out who the Dominion are.
Right. Which kind of shows the contrast between the different cultures, right?
Yeah.
The Dominion, who's all about control, information. Federation obviously taking a much more passive approach with the wormhole and the Gamma Quadrant.
You kind of see, and this is something that DS9 explores a lot, you kind of see the consequence of the attitude of just exploration, right? We're just here to explore and to learn. It's an amazing attitude and it's a wonderful thing to pursue, but then you've got the Dominion out there who already knows a lot about you and you're just learning about them for the first time and you're imprisoned by them, So that's just the first great setup in my mind of the Dominion. The second one is when the Dominion visits DS9 and they put an isolation shield around the guy that beamed aboard, the Dominion, the Jem'Hadar soldier. He then says, Commander Sisko's been captured. He's going to be made an example of. We're not going to tolerate you coming to our side of the wormhole anymore. And by the way, here are a couple Bajoran outposts that we just have eliminated, and we don't want to have to do this anymore, right? And then Dax goes, if you think that's going to stop us from exploring, you've been mistaken, right? Very Star Trek attitude. And then he goes, we've anticipated that response, and he just walks through the shield, right? Or I think that's when he hands them, when he hands them the pad of colonies that have been destroyed.
Oh, right.
But he beams aboard, and then he walks through the shield, and they are completely defenseless against
Caught with
them.
their pants down.
Completely.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. And so then you have a very famous moment, or sequence, I should say, of DS9, where they bring the USS Odyssey to the station. And they very specifically made a point to have this be a Galaxy-class starship, to kind of mirror the Enterprise D, which was still out there, right? The comparison was, completely 100% intentional. And then they have kind of a bit of an arrogant, but sort of Picard-like captain, right? Seems somewhat regal, I would say, in his appearance. And they all go to the Gamma Quadrant to find Sisko. And first they come across Nog and Jake, which is really funny. But then Sisko is escaping because Eris decides to help them out, right? And they're able to get her collar off so she can use her telekinetic powers to disable the shield. They're able to escape, right? And then at the same time, the Odyssey is coming from the Alpha Quadrant with some runabouts. Again, there's a lot that takes place in this episode. I am constantly amazed that this is only one episode. Odyssey gets fucked up by the Dominion. Completely fucked up. Their shields, they just immediately show that their shields just don't work at all.
Yeah.
Federation shields, and we've already seen this, but now we know that Federation shields don't work against weapons, they don't work against transporters. They are wholly unprepared for whoever the Dominion is, right? And we know that the Dominion's not just a single monolithic species. This is a hydra of whoever the fuck, right?
Don't even know.
Yeah, we don't even know. We've met two of their main, or one, the Jem'Hadar, so far as we know. But then they take it a step further. They get Sisko, they get Quark, and then they just decide to escape back to the Alpha Quadrant. They're done battling. They're done, trying to defend themselves or just going home. And then the Dominion sends a kamikaze ship after the Odyssey and blows that Galaxy-class ship up, and just makes you think as the audience, if that was the Enterprise, they would have just been completely fucked by this unknown, kind of batshit insane.
Right, they're not used to seeing that. Like, it's that level of following orders or allegiance to the greater cause of the Dominion. Like, the Jem'Hadar will literally blow themselves up
just to destroy you.
Yeah, just
to send a message,
just to complete their mission.
And they're operating on a completely different level than anything that the Federation have seen before, right? Other than maybe the Borg,
right?
But what is amazing about the Dominion are that they take place in a show that has decided to serialize itself, and so they do what I think TNG kind of could have done with the Borg. Before the Borg kind of got bastardized with First Contact with the Queen, with Voyager, the Dominion, they set it up perfectly, and they end the season perfectly. It's not a cliffhanger. It's more of just a statement, and it's Commander Sisko going, when the Dominion come through that wormhole, first battle is going to be here, and I intend to be ready for them. Boom, roll credits. Great way to end a season. It's not a cliffhanger, and I don't have anything against cliffhangers, but it's for a show that does serialization, the way that they choose to just go, we're going to end just letting you think about what just happened. Not that, oh my God, is DS9 going to blow up in the next episode?
Yeah.
It's not the next episode. It's you understand that this is a long thing. They're in it for the long haul when it comes to the Dominion.
Well, that's what's so sinister about the Dominion, is that in a sense they are so slow moving, and they're so they're all about intelligence gathering, right? Like, it's all about making the smartest moves.
Yeah.
Finding the weaknesses, finding the openings, and just exploiting it to the fullest potential.
And that's the big twist that you see at the end. Eris is not a victim of the Dominion. She is actually a spy. And this has been a total long con to instill someone who can gather intelligence at the core of the Federation, right? And so this is the first example of a Dominion kind of double play, which is just great. Wonderful. One of my favorite episodes of DS9.
Pretty damn good.
So a couple honorable mentions of season 2. My first honorable mention is the episode Crossover, which is the Mirror Universe, the first Mirror Universe episode of season 2. Yeah. This is, we get a little bit of very rare in old Star Trek, and by that I mean pre-2009, very rare name drop of someone from a different show. James Kirk and Spock. The crossover event is explicitly discussed and mentioned. In a very nice expositional way, I should mention, Kira doesn't know anything about Kirk or Spock, so she has to have it explained to her. But as soon as she tells Bashir, he knows immediately, the crossover event. He's read about it in historical accounts. So introduces a couple fun things. Mirror Universe O'Brien is called Smiley. That's always fun. Mirror Universe Cisco is and then you've got Mirror Universe Kira, which is, I think, almost like a proto Game of Thrones character in a way. She's obsessed with herself from the regular universe in a bit of a sexual way, in a bit of an uncomfortable way, right? Has just this insane ego. Very well played by Nana Visitor. And I think she is kind of the main part of the Mirror Universe storyline that continues throughout DS9. This is the first of, I think, 5 episodes of Mirror Universe, of the Mirror Universe in DS9, I should say. So That's my first honorable mention.
Nice. I forgot that we even see the mirror universe in season 2.
Yeah.
My first little mention would be the episode Profit and Loss. It's another Quark-centric episode. But in this, we see 3 Cardassians aboard the DS9, and they're political refugees, one of which was a woman that Quark had been in love with in the past. And there's great kind of character development with Quark and furthering of kind of Cardassian politics. But the thing about this episode I just absolutely love is when these Cardassians first arrive, they're spotted by Garrick down on the promenade, and they immediately know that this is trouble. And Quark, who loves one of these women that's with in this group, wants to make sure that there's not going to be any trouble, and has to go talk to Garrick about what he saw and what he might say to certain people. And there's just this great double talk between them over a dress that Quark is talking about potentially buying, but they're not talking about the dress. They're talking about this woman. But it's just like, I love the way that dialogue is written. It's just like a fantastic little scene.
Personally, I find this style a bit too radical. But your friend seems the sort who appreciates that kind of thing.
Different tastes for different people. Nothing wrong with that, is there?
Oh, you'd be surprised how detrimental a poor choice of fashion can be.
Is that the one? Is that where Garrick rips the dress at the end?
Rips the dress, yeah.
That is a great scene.
Yeah, so those were my main thoughts on.
That's a great episode.
Just had to mention.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. My second honorable mention, I think this is one that we share, is Sanctuary.
What happens in that episode?
Wait, I'm sorry. Wrong term. The one that we share is Paradise.
Yes.
Other utopia word. This episode's called Sanctuary. This is the episode, has a classic Star Trek dilemma in it. It's the Skria. They are the refugees from the Gamma Quadrant who have had their society decimated. Yes. Yeah, they've had their society decimated by the Dominion. Again, I think this might be our first mention of the Dominion as a force of harm, right? And destruction. But it's got just a very, very classic Trek dilemma in that, Bajor is a world that's recovering on its own, rebuilding and having its own struggles. And then the Skria come along, and they depict the Skria as I don't know what best word I could come up with is kind of troublesome and a bit destructive in their behaviors, right?
Particularly the emotional males.
Yes, exactly. The emotional males, especially the adolescents, which we see they have conflict with Jake and Nog. And so they kind of show them as being a bit of an unwanted force, right? But what I love about it is that they don't really explicitly say at the end who is right. They kind of lean pretty heavily on the Skria. The Skria woman, her name is Hanik. She kind of lays into Kira pretty strongly near the end of the episode.
I still believe this is the best choice for Bajor and for you.
You still believe we would have been a burden to your people?
Yes.
I think you've made a terrible mistake. All of you.
Because Bajor would not let the Skrians settle on their planet. The Skrians believe that Bajor is like the divine planet that they are destined to inhabit, right? It lines up with their own religion and everything.
What do they call it again?
I forget what they call it exactly.
Shambhala.
But yeah, it's they see it as this paradise that they're meant to kind of inherit, right? And the diplomatic conflict of that versus the Bajorans, who are just trying to rebuild their society after the Cardassian occupation. And what happens when you pit those ideas together. And so that's a great episode and one of my honorable mentions.
I love kind of the, you've got the kind of juxtaposition of these two cultures that are very heavily united behind prophecy and their religious belief. Like the Bajorans, the wormhole is so important to them, and through this wormhole has come this other civilization that through the eye of the gods, or whatever they called it, they would find this Shambhala, this like paradise land for them. And the Bajorans reject it. It's like it's the hero denying the quest in a way that like if they had accepted them in, like it sounds like the Skria were like great farmers and like very like could have really helped, and I think the Bajorans end up struggling with like food production and something, and it's like if they had let them in, if they had followed maybe their even what would have been in their own culture to accept them in, you know, but because there's so many problems, and I feel like a very intentionally the skin of the Skria is unsettling. It looks like a sickly person.
It does.
With like boils or something, lesions on their skin when it's just that
kind of flaky.
Flaky, it looks gross. And I feel like that was very intentional to make them like kind of off-putting.
I think you're right,
Yeah.
They were intentionally off-putting and disruptive and destructive. And that leads you to not like them and to not like their kind of imposition on Bajoran society. But what would have happened? Who knows?
Right.
Maybe they would have been really good for Bajor. Maybe they would have been good for each other and had a sort of synergy, you know. But we'll never know. Next honorable mention is just the one that we both have.
Well, I was going to mention another episode, Rivals, which is a couple funny little things about this episode. It starts on the actor Christopher Sarandon, who is also very notably plays Prince Humperdinck in Princess Bride. Just kind of funny coincidence of appearing in the same season with the first appearance of Wallace Shawn.
Yeah.
Also, funny little thing. He's, you know, this very charismatic con man that we kind of follow for a lot of the episode. But at the same time, we've got the very beginning of the budding of the Bashir O'Brien bromance.
Yes.
Which, like, I just love that O'Brien is dealing with the fact that he's kind of aging a little bit. He's not as fast and spry as he was. He's getting beaten by Bashir pretty handedly in the space racquetball or whatever. Which, and of course, though, this like lends itself to future development of Bashir, who ends up being genetically enhanced, that he would just be so excellent and, you know, just wiping the walls with O'Brien, even when he's trying to downplay like probably what he could. But you've kind of got just this chaos on the station where this like gambling device is being replicated and developed, and like all of the luck from other aspects of the station are being like tampered with. And it just like, I don't know, it's just like a kind of a fun, quirky, like little Star Trek episode. Like,
it's another planting of the seed, right? O'Brien does not like Bashir at the start of their bromance, you know? And that's kind of brought to a head here when it comes out in the form of just kind of natural competitiveness. And then Bashir wipes the floor with him, this annoying, young, innocent guy, you know, baby-faced guy. And I love it too. There's a scene later, I don't know if it's season 3 or 4, where they both get shit-faced, they get drunk. And O'Brien, he says like some kind of comment where he's like, I hated you at the start. And it's such a payoff because you see it in seasons 1 and then 2. And then it's just so nice to see them, you know, at the end of the show. You know, it's a sad thing when their characters finally have their last scenes together, which we'll get to later on. But, you know, great episode. I agree. Also, an honorable mention is Bashir's outfit.
Oh, can't forget that
fantastic Star Trek 90s outfit. Perfect.
Little onesie. All right.
Paradise. Our last honorable mention. This episode suffers from a, can't think of the Star Trek name, so I'll overdub it later on.
The Omega Glory
syndrome, where you had the Yanks and the Cones at the very end of the episode, and it completely ruined the rest of the episode in a way. This episode starts off pretty strong, and has a great villain in the way of Alexis. I think that's her name. O'Brien and Cisco get stranded on a planet where some other people have gotten stranded years and years ago and have just built a life for themselves. But as the episode progresses, you find out that Alexis has actually deliberately engineered this to happen such that she would become the leader of this sort of marooned society that she could mold into her own image. But it was intentional. And that's kind of the big reveal of the episode. And as you go on, you get the sense that something is off because she doesn't want O'Brien or Cisco to leave. She even makes a comment early on that they're going to be great for their little group, right?
Two strong young men.
Two strong. Yep, exactly. Two able-bodied. Yes, exactly.
What an addition.
Yeah. And she's really well cast. I wish I knew the actress's name, but I'll just pop it up here. And so this episode has a scene in it that I think like directly it puts Cisco in a position of having to address something that happens with like clear racial undertones. And so probably one of the more visceral scenes of this season and of DS9 in general is when this white lady forces Commander Cisco to get into a hot box as punishment for A, not taking off his uniform, and B, I think him and O'Brien were trying to get out of the planet. Yeah, get off the planet. And it is a very uncomfortable scene to watch. And I think it was a really interesting way of putting Cisco in this position as an African-American male in the 24th century. You know, I think part of the idea was that he has been so far removed from this part of his past that it brings it all right back to the top, right? For the viewer and for Cisco himself, and I'm sure for Avery Brooks, right?
Big time.
Yeah, and so it's very unsettling. Really, 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 really makes you hate this lady a lot, right? She's very well cast in how hateable she is, especially once she does this. But where you and I have both kind of agreed in that this is a bit of our complaint with this episode is the end, where her fellow, I don't know what you would call them, villagers, you know, they all find out that she has engineered this whole thing and that they've all kind of been tricked into being marooned here. And then she kind of explains why, and she explains that she wanted to get back to the roots of what it meant to be, you know, a human and to live on your own and to not to be tied down by technology. Which, okay, we can explore that concept maybe in a different setting. But what we both, I think, have agreed on is that she gets off entirely scot-free.
Well,
in the eyes of the villagers.
Right.
You know? She does get taken into custody, but the villagers all kind of decide to keep living there.
To stay. Well, I don't know. I don't remember how long they've been there, and I think this might be
it's like 10 or 12 years. It's a long time.
I feel like this might be a bit of like an effect of just like the length of the episode that it had to end. Like I'm not totally opposed to the villagers ultimately deciding to stay. This has become like the world for them. This is the life they know. They have a very tightly knit community. They're probably relatively happy with each other. But because the episode is ending and they have to wrap everything up, they're just like, no, this is fine. We like it here.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot more that they would have to, there would be anger, there'd be confusion, there would be, they'd be afraid, I'm sure, in some like ways of like what's going to happen. What is this all meant for this last 10 years? But ultimately, I could see them making the decision to stay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The episode had to wrap up. This is, I think, an artifact of it. They did have to make this a standalone episode. Yeah. So it had to follow the conventions of television.
Yeah.
And they're like, shit, we've got 2 minutes to wrap this up. And so it feels entirely unearned.
Right.
And it also feels like a bit of a vindication of Alexis. And that's, I think, where I took the most issue from, is that she's getting taken into custody, but she's saying, yeah, look how great the society is that we made. And then they're all kind of like, well, yeah, huh?
Sure. But
and then it's like, no, you have a lot to unpack, you know?
To answer. Well, it's really interesting. It reminds me a lot of an old episode of The Twilight Zone called On Thursday We Leave for Home, which is the story of a group of like colonists that went off onto, humanity was sending ships of people off into vast places across the galaxy that could potentially harbor life, trying to find more habitable planets. And there's a group that's been marooned for the last 20 years or so that they're on this just two-sunned, arid, I think it's like even just like a meteor, that it's miserable conditions. And the only thing that's kept them going is their captain has been telling them stories of Earth, and what a paradise it is. But he has managed to hold them all together, and he's their leader, and they have this very tightly knit community, and they rely on each other, and he plays just the most essential role. And trouble really begins when a group of a spaceship lands to come and rescue them all. And when it's found out that they all plan on separating out and not staying together when they arrive back on Earth, I can't remember the main character's name. William Benteen. He's totally distraught by this and is destroyed because this has been his whole world, his whole life.
Yeah.
And he then begins trying his hardest to convince all of them to not go back to Earth and to stay and that they need each other. And so like totally similar vibes off of this, where it's like...
Absolutely.
He didn't manufacture the situation, but he doesn't want to change because he's happy here. He's happy with his position, with his role. And like it's the same thing with, what's her name, Alexis? And even Cisco alludes to her having maybe a bit of like a godlike complex, or seeing herself as a bit of a cult leader. Like he makes one mention of like, and maybe one day feeling the hand of God on your shoulder, like kind of hinting at like, you like having the control over these people and like running the show here.
Yeah.
But it is, I love kind of the concept though of exploring like an anti-technology life, returning to the roots of humanity. And then you got these lovely tie-ins of this like, this woman that's contriving the whole situation. She has this fetish for anti-technological society. She staked out the planet months in advance, you know, contrived the entire life support failure that caused them to crash land there, set up the fields that would keep them from trying to escape or using any of their technology. And then the racial ties, like just a lot going on in this episode that unfortunately just had to wrap itself up too quickly. And
had a bit of a TOS episode I can't remember the name of.
That one's just so egregious. This
that
one's not
the
quite
worst.
as bad.
That's why that's the example that I go to, is that's just such an egregious example. But this one is like, and I will say this about this episode is I don't think I would have as much of an issue with the ending if they hadn't done the hot box. If the fact that
there's
she
that
puts
weird
him,
tone kind of conflict, right?
Yeah, the fact that she put him, and I'm just now thinking this, like the fact that she put him in the hot box, there needed to be a bit of a different payoff for her at the end, other than just, oh, she gets to go to white person jail.
Right.
Which who knows what that fucking means, you know? There needed to be, and not saying that she needed to like get like punished or killed or whatever, but there needed to be a different narrative payoff specifically because of that scene.
Totally.
I think at least. So
it just made me remember though, when the first person we see coming out of the hot box, at the end when she's explaining herself, like she's talking about like, look how great your life is. And to the guy that was in the hot box, she's like, you would have been in prison or like a fucking junkie or something.
You just
like,
put him in prison.
like,
what the fuck?
That's a lot worse than what he would have dealt with. Oh, shit.
Yeah. So overall, I would say for the first, I'd have to think about it as DS9 progresses, but the first couple seasons, they just get better and better. And season 2 is a clear example of that, where season 1, some of the actors were a little bit shaky, but I think they got some experience. The writers kind of got into a bit of a rhythm. This is the last season where DS9 overlapped with TNG directly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they had that element to play with. And I think I'll talk about that more on our next episode with season 3 and how they really dove into the Dominion a little more explicitly. But just a great episode, or a great season. Well done, well written, and did a lot of lifting narratively in the way of planting seeds, right? Quark's trajectory, Rom's trajectory, the Dominion, Bajor's position in this very, very quickly becoming a prominent sector of the Alpha Quadrant, right? Where do they stand in all this? The Cardassians, and just it's a great season. I would highly recommend it to anyone.
Oh yeah, watch DS9.
Oh, yeah. If there's any, I think we talked about this before. DS9 it's my favorite Star Trek show, along with TNG and TOS. They all are even. I'm not interested in debating which one is better than the other. They are all equal to each other. But DS9 very clearly, I think, earns its position as one of the best Star Trek shows.
Yeah, it absolutely.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Character development, serialization, just overall, really good.
I mean, yeah, overall, overarching, plots and developments, you definitely have to give it to DS9. It takes the cake, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And TNG and TOS.
Right. Well, TNG TOS, I think they definitely hit it on more singular episodes. But I definitely feel like DS9, you see probably more character growth than
you do.
Either the two.
You do. You really do. It's the best Star Trek show, along with TNG and TOS.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for now. We'll see you later.